Hello again, my friends. Master Silk here with another age-old deck tech video, if you will. Um, Today's video is we're going to talk about one of the more powerful strategies in all of the Jade arc of the game. I'm going to show you the stronghold, and you're probably going to gag. The Eternal Halls of Sheba, 547. 7 meant that more than likely it was going to go first unless you were playing Lion, and then it was a coin flip. um, uh, Now, the original version of this card came out in um, The Hidden Emperor, The Dark Journey Home. And that set had 3 of the best strongholds in the history of the game. Certainly at the time, they were the three of the best. Now they might be top 10, top 15, but the original version of this. So this is to be errated twice. The first version said when you reveal the stronghold, all Shugenja that are in your deck, hand, provinces, etc., gain your clan alignment. So basically, that means that you could put any clan Shugenja in your deck and proclaim them. Or, even worse, get the clan discount. It costs 2 less gold. They found out real quick that that was probably not a good idea, and they errated it. The second errata was more of a functional errata, to keep you from using this other ability, which is once per turn, immediately after you discard a Kehoe, after it is cast, you can return it to your hand and then discard a card from your hand to replace it. But you cannot take this action more than once per Kehoe title, or with the same copy of the Kehoe. So you can do it once with each copy, basically. And there was a functional errata to make that work, if you will. So the deck is called FETA, which stands for Finding Enlightenment Through Air. And I'll get to those cards in a minute. One of the cards that made this deck very playable is the Kaede Sensei. So you buy your stronghold, you go get 1 elemental ring from your deck or discard pile, put it in your hand, and you cannot win by honor victory this game. Okay, that's perfectly fine. You don't care about that. You want the ring. So you're trying to enlighten, is what you're trying to do. I'm going to go over both the Dynasty and the Fate deck. So the events, Peasants Revolt, bow anything with 3 or greater force, personalities, and followers. They don't straighten during their controller's next straighten phase. Okay, you're running Shugenja. Most of your Shugenja are going to be high chi and low force. So this is just going to slow your opponent down. Emperor's Peace, you can't attack me this turn. Okay, that gives you time. Nagastorm Miramoto Mountain. So basically, what this card does is if your opponent is trying to take multiple provinces this turn, if they destroy one province, if let's say they're attacking 2 or more provinces this turn, they're trying to destroy multiple. What this does is that after the first province is destroyed, the second province is prevented from being destroyed. So again, it's another defensive tactic. Blessings of Isawa. So once this comes out, the next Kiho that you perform, Kihos are a special card type that can only be performed by monk or Shugenja personalities, typically. Basically, it binds the Kiho to the personality, and the personality gains the ability of the Kiho. And then, as the shadow falls, cuts off honor gains for the next 2 turns. This is severely hampers the honor decks, particularly the turbo honor decks. Let's see. Let me put this in the back for the time being. So holdings, small farm, free, produces 1 gold, cheap, efficient. Merchant caravans. So it's a 0 cost holding. You have to bow and discard a fate card, and whatever fate card that you discard, you use the focus value in the bottom center of the card as how much gold it produces. This was super important to help you turbo out the Ring of the Void, because once your hand's empty, you go get Ring of the Void, and then your hand's empty, play it, draw 5 cards. But this also made it very easy to produce 4 gold. 0 for 4, even if the cost of a card was super cheap. Empty Crevice, this is a fortification, so it attaches to your province. It attaches bows, you can't use it that turn. But it does produce 3 gold for 2, which is super cheap. And then, obviously, the Silver Mines, a 2 for 3 if you're Phoenix. Standard of their day. So, I think the deck also ran Kirin Shrine, which basically meant that your Shugenja's or your personality's chi could not be reduced below its printed chi. I think when I was putting this together, I omitted it, and I'm not sure why, but the original version ran it. So this was one of your best tutor cards in the deck. Grove of the 5 Masters. So you can bow this to go basically tutor for any Kiho in your deck, put it in your hand, and then discard a card from your hand. This was one of the more important tutor cards in the deck. Still love it. I think it was only reprinted once in Diamond Edition. Kind of sad about that. I was a big fan. Personalities. We'll start with the super cheap Asako Hoshiguro. So in this deck, it was a 2/2 for 1 gold because of a cost reduction. The reason you were running it, besides being cheap, is it has an ability on it Now the ability is not very useful itself, but when we get to the Ring of Air, you'll understand why we were running this. Back then, the Shugenjas, if they had an ability printed on them, they had what was known as an innate ability. And innate abilities could be used for you to play the Ring of Air back in those days. So they were very important to stuff your deck full of these so that you could easily trigger it. Now, if I remember correctly, yeah, normally I would have, there was a Seppin chick from Hidden Emperor 3 that you get to bow her to produce gold equal to her personal honor. Typically that's what I, and if I remember correctly, she was a Shugenja as well. Normally that's what we'd run in this spot. I did not have a place that I think I only could find one in all the cards that we had. So in lieu of that, I ran Isawa Uana. So this is another card that can help you empty your hand fast for Ring of the Void. So you can look at face down cards with her. And I thought it was, she's boxable, she's got 3 chi, so she's cheap to cast spells. And then she helps one of your victory conditions, or 2 of the victory conditions, because of her ability. It's an innate ability. You can use it to help with the Ring of Air as well as the Ring of the Void with her other ability. Alright, so putting the Ring of Fire into play was difficult. Since you had to win a duel where your opponent had higher chi. Asawa Hochiu was very important for the strategy. It's a battle duel. You get to focus before the duel starts, and the loser just bowed, so I mean it's not terrible. Hochiu is boxable, so it's 2 gold based on the Jade Edition rules. 2 chi is not a lot, but if you have to target a 3, and you're not going to lose your guy for dueling. You can only do it once per battle, but you are running 3. So this is the only non-Shugenja in the deck. I ran Reagan because this is one of those cards that says I need to protect a specific piece. So what Reagan did is let you bow and react to your opponent playing a card targeting your Shugenja. And you basically get to redirect it to him. So he dies or something bad happens, it's to him instead of the others. Next up is Asawa Taruko. So what Taruko does is Taruko hunts for fortifications. The only fortification in your deck is Empty Crevice. Now this is the original printed version. Taruko was errated, or MRP'd, most recent printing in Gold Edition. When you search for it in this version, you reduce the cost by her chi. So basically it made it as a free card, basically. Another innate ability, important. Alright, so these 3, I'm playing a newer version, but it should be Shiba Ningen. Basically the whole shtick about the reason you ran Ningen was it was boxable, 3 gold, and had a reaction when Ningen entered play. You refilled the province face up. So it's again another trigger for air, and also lets you go deeper into your deck. Now we get to the uniques. Agasha Genai, 2/3 boxable, 6 gold, which is 4 here. Will not join the Dragon Clan. That's because in the story they left the Dragon Clan and joined the Phoenix. Open action. Bow to draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards. Again, another innate ability. Lets you dig deeper into your deck. Very important. Isawa Osugi. Can't gain the Shadowlands trait. Cannot have more than 1 spell, but the spell that you attach to Osugi is free. Has its gold cost reduced to 0. That's important. Isawa Norikazu. So again, this is another card that cancels actions. The difference here is at the end of the turn, the action that got canceled goes back to the that player's hand. So it's basically a hit the pause button. Alright, so this is the only personality in the deck that is affected by Peasant Revolt, and that's Nakakuru. Master of the 5 elements. Or, so it doesn't bow to produce Kihos, but he can only use that ability once per turn, and after he plays a Kiho at the end of your turn, you get to draw an additional card during your end phase. So he was very useful even if he was 12 gold. So what's this deck trying to do? Well, let's get to the bread and butter. So obviously your goal is to play the 5 elemental rings. The important one here, the important ones of this group, is the Ring of Air. So you have to play this when you produce 3 spell effects or innate abilities in a turn. So innate abilities were printed abilities on Shugenja, and spell abilities referred to spell and or Kihos. So the object is to be able to play this card first. Well, why particularly this card? Alright. The important card in this is the card the deck is named after, Finding the Harmony. Bow one of your monks or Shugenja to switch an elemental ring card in your hand for one you have in play. This does not count as playing a ring. So the important information in this is and at the time the wording on Enlightenment was you win immediately if you control all 5 elemental rings. It didn't care whether they were played or not. But air was the easiest one to play for this deck. So what you would typically do is get air into play, use Finding the Harmony to bounce air back to your hand, and then play a ring that you had trouble playing. and then you could play Air out again later. So it ran Finding Harmony, double chi. The double chi was important for getting fire into play because you had to target somebody with a higher chi, and normally if you challenge somebody with higher chi and they have higher chi than you, they can just strike. So that's why you're running Hochiyu and double chi. You had the Wind's Truth. Oh, I also need to talk about Narada. I'll do that. Let me set these aside. Yeah. You put the Wind's Truth at the back. We'll talk about those in a minute. Flee the Darkness. I'm running the newer version of the card, but basically if somebody targets me in battle, targets one of my cards in battle, I can bow a Shugenja or Monk and play this to cancel the action. This was very important for protecting your guys. Again, more defensive protection. Card selection. By far, this was one of the better card draws in the game. Banish all shadows. Wording was a little weird on this one, but you look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You put one of those cards in your hand, and then you shuffle the other cards back into your deck. So basically, it was kind of like Impulse for Magic, except for it didn't cost anything except bowing your guy. But 40 card deck, 4 cards deep, 10% of your deck was pretty good. You were running a playset of those. I'm going to get back to Finding the Harmony in a minute, but the Wind's Truth was another card that was usable in your honor decks or your dishonor decks. So you bow one of your monks or Shugenjas when honor is being gained or lost. Redirect that honor gain or loss to another player. So if you were getting targeted by dishonor, you could send honor loss to them, and if they were trying to heavily honor you or heavily honor out, you could redirect the honor back to you, keeping them from gaining it. This card was errated in a future set. It was errated in Gold Edition, so that you couldn't redirect more than the Shugenja's chi, or Monk's chi, because you could, 7, 10, 15, 20 honor at a time you could do with this. Back to Finding the Harmony. This deck was really good, so eventually when they reprinted this, they made it where you couldn't win the game. They reworded this where the rings didn't count for Enlightenment victory at all. And as a matter of fact, I think this became the precursor to why that they have to be played by their own text now. Void was the other easy one to play. Fire was kind of difficult, required some setup. Ring of Earth. Play this after an attack against one of your provinces in which the attacking army had a force higher than your province strength at any point and the province was not destroyed. This was pretty simple because most decks were military. Um, in the in the matchups where they weren't military, you put this into play with Finding. And then Ring of Water. You had to destroy a terrain, play a new terrain, and then destroy an opposing army or province, either as an attacker or defender. That typically, in that day and age, it wasn't really difficult because they really wanted to play terrains that shut you down. Let's go over the spells. So, Amnesia was basically a one-trick pony. That lets you shut off a stronghold or a sensei. Now, this card was important in only certain matchups. But it was done to senseis were very defining cards in this era, and senseis didn't come around until Honor Bound, but from Honor Bound until the end of the Jade arc at War of the Spirits, they were, here, let me hose your entire strategy, and that's what this was for. The spell tutor version was Walking Away. It basically was 4 gold, buy your Shugenja, search your deck for a fate card and put it in your hand. So you could search for anything that you needed. You typically didn't search for the Keyhose with that because you had other cards for that. But this was very important. I've got different ones from different eras, but my favorite artwork is still Quentin Hoover, God rest his soul. I think in this spot, Torrential Downpour was typically used. I could not find my copies. Torrential Downpour basically ended the battle without resolution and sent everybody homebound, which was pretty powerful. And I think it's also 5 gold. I think it was a rare Imperial Emerald Obsidian and gold, if I remember correctly. So in this, I ended up just putting 2 Earthquakes, which is bow the Shugenja to bow an opposing personality. This was the card that basically shut everything down, and matter of fact, eventually this card had to be removed. So Rise from the Ashes, stop players from gaining honor, declare an attack, target an opponent with actions. Any honor gains that has been done already have been negated, and this is removed from the game. But 3 copies of this literally made sure that when time comes for while you're setting up putting the last year rings in play, this doesn't affect rings, but it affects every other component of the game except honor laws. But this basically shut everything off. So yeah, this was Dark Journey Home was ridiculous. The rest of the cards, if I remember correctly, are all defensive measures. So you have entrapping terrain, which is a terrain that sends everybody home without bowing and stops anything from being province being destroyed. Flooded Pass. This is one that could be played without presence, which was in those days, and as a matter of fact, throughout the entire history of the game, to play an action in a battle, it either had to say that you could play it there, or you had to have somebody there to execute the order. But what this did is it increased your province strength by 2 for every attacking unit your opponent had, which was pretty good, and you could play this without having anybody there. Another card. So this was another one of those cards that was very important for defending and emptying your hand. Flattery lets you discard cards from your hand with the focus value was greater than the total force of the opposing army. When the battle ends without resolution, all units return home without bowing, and this could also be played without presence. And then block supply lanes. Obviously there are other cards that you could play. You had refugees. There's another card that you could play without presence. So there was a lot of cool decks back then. I've got more to go over with you. Not tonight though. It's going to be Master Silk signing off. Until next time, there is no escape from the tiger.